Trước khi bắt đầu, nếu bạn đang tìm kiếm sách để học IELTS hiệu quả, thì đây là những cuốn sách chúng mình khuyên dùng. Bạn hãy xem ở phần giỏ hàng trong kênh nhé.
Section 3. You will hear two students called Eva and Mike discussing their research project on tourism.
Hi, Eva. Is this a good time for us to look at our research project? Our tutor told us to keep the focus narrow. So what about we go for why people choose to go to certain places and attractions and leave the rest out?
You're right. Otherwise, we'll have far too much information to cope with. Okay, so what about the survey?
Well, I've looked through the ideas we had for questions for it, and I think it's not clear how we use the word area. Sometimes it seems to mean a place, other times the field of our research, and even tourist attraction in some cases.
Oh, I think that's my fault. I typed out our notes.
Oh, it's probably best to use it for place in the sense of province or whatever.
Yes, I think so. You know, we decided to concentrate on culture and tourism. I wonder if we're really saying culture in the same way as most people do, because on our list of places to carry out our surveys, I see you've put the Round Music Festival, which is contemporary music. I thought we were going to be looking at more traditional forms of culture.
That would be confirming these old-fashioned ideas that culture has to be something that's at least 100 years old.
But that is what most people think.
Well, let's not get into an argument about that right now. Let's think about the number of completed questionnaires we need. In total, how many questionnaires do you think we have to get? 100? 200? And over how many different events?
Our tutor said we should have at least 200. Otherwise, the information won't actually mean that much. And I think it's not practical to try to go to more than about 5 events. We've got to get the first draft in by the end of February.
And you think we should interview everybody or just tourists?
Because presumably there'd be local people, domestic tourists, and international tourists at some events.
In fact, the more I think about it, the more I think we should just go for the tourists, but from overseas as well as national. I'm sure we'd be able to provide more interesting results if we did that.
Right.
There's one thing that worries me, though.
What's that?
We said it's important to get some background on the people who answer our questions, like what's their job, what they thought about the event. But the idea of asking people how old they are...
We can't just ask them to tick a box with an age in it and tell them they don't have to do it if they don't want to. We could write in our own estimate when we've finished.
Are you sure that would be okay?
Yes, it's not the most crucial piece of information they're giving. We're going to have a lot of facts and figures to present. Have you any preference for putting them into a pie chart, a table, or a graph?
Tables are easy to do, but I read that most people find pie charts visually stimulating. I hate reading graphs because, unless they're quite big, you don't get exact figures.
Pie chart sounds good. How are we going to divide up the work?
If it's okay with you, I'd like us to meet as often as possible to look at what we've each written up. But we should do the actual writing on our own. Okay, would this be a good time to discuss our introduction? An overview of tourism around the world, looking at different tourist attractions in different countries. But there are so many to choose from, though, so let's narrow it down.
Absolutely.
I found out that Mexico celebrates the fact that it produces a huge number of varieties of chilies, and people flock to this special event to taste dishes using them. A lot of people think of Mexico as being the best place to see fantastic museums. That's true, but let's take a different tact. What about Greece, one of the world's most famous countries for tourists?
Yes, and I think we should go for the ruins in this case. The temples and theaters and so on, rather than the food.
And for Britain, instead of focusing on the countryside and parks, I'd like to find out more about why people go to see plays and musicals. Is it because there's such a good choice?
Interesting point. And for India, instead of concentrating on the temples or the game parks, we could mention all the different folk dances. Every region has its own, and they don't just perform them at festivals. They're part of everyday life.
Okay, we've got more than enough. Let's draft the introduction.
Part 3. You will hear part of a discussion between two drama students called Charles and Lorna about a songwriting course.
Hi, Charles. I'm writing my report on the songwriting course for drama students. You know, the 1-week residential course for drama students from different universities where you learn about writing songs. You did that course last year, didn't you? Could you give me some tips for the report? I'm having a few problems with it.
Yes, it was great. Well, Lorna, you could start by thinking about what you got out of it.
Evaluating how useful it was is simple. The challenge is not to go over length.
Referring to published sources might help. That would make it more scholarly too.
OK, I'll go with that.
And saying why you did the songwriting course is important. Some people just do it as another string to their bow to help with auditions for work and things. I thought it was a good opportunity to try out new techniques for communicating feelings and emotions. I was already confident about singing before I did it.
I thought it was the location of the course which made it special, being held in a country house rather than in a university. They were doing some building work on part of the house, though, so it wasn't always easy to concentrate.
I enjoyed the workshop most. How about you?
Well, we were divided into 6 small groups for the afternoon, each with their own advisor. That was the best bit for me, having that discussion with an expert. When we got into pairs to start writing our songs, the idea was to combine people with different levels of knowledge and experience. But my partner preferred working on her own generally.
And what did you think of the course content? I hadn't realised before how important the structure of a song is to its success.
Yes, we learned it's no use writing the most beautiful words and melodies if there's no shape. And we learned about the importance of a chorus in a song.
I knew about that stuff from my singing classes. It's a bit obvious, isn't it?
I suppose so. It was the input on lyrical styles and forms that I found tedious. You could always look them up on the web.
Anyway, how did you get on with writing your song?
It was tough, and Peggy, my partner, was hard work, which wasn't funny, and writing was a slow process as a result of our lack of communication. By the time we finished, I was exhausted.
Writing music from the heart is like that, especially by the end of a course.
Well, that's got the report sorted, thanks. Have you decided which teachers' workshops you're going to do next term?
I want to do Bob Lacey's. He's got a brilliant reputation for voice coaching. You know, getting us to use dialects and different pronunciation and stuff. He gets you to do things like read out a newspaper article in character. It's amazing.
I'm thinking of going to Evelyn Chance's workshop.
Oh, Evelyn. She's quite a character. Is she running the stage fights course again?
Yes, fencing and pretend punches and throwing techniques. She really knows how to help actors use the whole of the space available.
Lots of people like Ted Winter's workshop.
He knows how to deliver. He's keen on actors conveying emotion through their bodies and faces alone. It's a great way to reveal complex relationships and situations to an audience without making a speech of any kind. I'm definitely going to sign up for that one.
If you want to understand a director's ideas, Kevin Gray's workshop would be perfect for you. He likes telling people what to do, and he's always saying you can't have a company of actors reading a play any way they want because they'd end up fighting amongst themselves. They must listen to the director.
What about Dorothy Thomas? She's good at activities for getting rid of stress and, emptying your mind of all thoughts about the past, and that can really help when acting.
Well, I think I'll put my name down for...
Section 3. You will hear two students called Tom and Bella attending the third meeting of the after-school club. They are talking with their professor about the furniture company.
Before we start, Tom and Bella, thanks for coming in today to talk about the key case studies that will help you to understand your classwork better. Now, I hope you've read the notes I gave you last week on the furniture company Willows, as this will be the focus of our discussion today. Let's begin. Who can tell me what the current focus of the company's business is?
The company used to be very large, with many retail outlets across the country. However, since the recession, there have been fewer people spending money on furniture, and so the company was forced to close all of its outlets, and now only operates online.
Well done, Tom. Bella, can you add anything?
Willows used to produce a very large number of products, such as tables, chairs, and light fittings. However, through market research, they realized that most of their profit was made from the sale of bookcases, so they now specialize in this one product.
Very good. Does anyone know how our department began its contact with Willows?
Did you contact the company, Professor?
No, Tom, it wasn't through me.
Our headmaster saw an article that the manager had written in the newspaper and became very interested in the company. He contacted Willows and arranged for a student to work there full-time during the summer.
Yes, exactly. Does anyone know what the student thought of their time working at Willows?
Yes, he is a friend of ours. He worked as a member of the design team, creating technical drawings of the furniture using a computer. There was a special software that he used, which he said had a bad interface and was very difficult to predict. However, it was very efficient and helpful for quickly drawing up furniture designs.
How interesting.
Yes, it was. We both visited him whilst he was working there, and he showed us around. Unfortunately, visitors were not allowed to access the IT department, but it was great to chat with his colleagues.
Did you meet his manager?
His manager is a very busy man, so he didn't have time to meet with us. However, we were allowed to inspect the accounts, which really helped us to understand the effects of the software on the company.
Well, what an exciting experience. Now, before I forget, next week I'll be conducting face-to-face interviews with each of you to prepare for job interviews.
Can we do it as a group?
I'm afraid not, Bella. I want to give each of you my undivided attention, and there will be too much disturbance if I interview you all together. Plus, it will be more realistic if I interview you alone.
Have you finished writing the feedback on our exam results, Professor?
Yes, I have, Tom, and I must say that I was not disappointed. I am glad to say that your performance has dramatically increased since you began attending this after-school club, and you have both scored above the average. If you continue to work hard, your results should soon improve significantly. Now, back to our discussion about Willows. Can anyone tell me what business decisions might benefit the company?
A new system would definitely benefit Willows. Their system is very outdated. I don't think it would help them to gain more profit. However, the system is capable of doing the work of hundreds of people. This would, therefore, significantly lower labor costs.
I agree. Unfortunately, unless they also replace the machinery in their workshop, the new system won't reduce the production time.
That is a shame. If they can't reduce their production time, they won't be able to increase sales. The answer is to hire more staff in order to increase the efficiency of the production line.
Yes, you have both made interesting points. Now for one final question before we finish this week's session. How will new clients be affected by the new system?
Unfortunately, the new system does not allow clients to connect to the Willows system from home, so they are unable to access their work online. This also means that the system presents no opportunity to attract more contacts, since clients are unable to view it from their homes.
Yes, that's true. However, it could definitely benefit clients who visit the showroom. The system is very interactive and allows clients to easily browse the furniture catalog, which will save them a lot of time.
It's a shame that staff are still needed to guide clients through the online system, as it means that no savings can be made in labour costs. I think the major benefit of the new system is that it enables staff to design the furniture in front of the client, which allows them to get a lot more involved in the design.
Bravo! You've both contributed fantastic points to our conversation. That concludes our session for today. I'll see you next week.
Part 3. You will hear 2 music students discussing the results of a survey they have done.
So, Gareth, we need to organise the findings from our survey on music students for the final presentation.
Yes, Lorna. I think we've got some very interesting results. Obviously, we need to start by saying that we interviewed all the third-year students doing a music degree and state the objective of our research project, that is, to find out about their attitudes to performing.
And then we should talk about the students' musical backgrounds before coming to university. The most important points to make are that although most people have actually composed music during the course, that wasn't the case when they arrived. And the other thing they had in common was the piano.
Well, they'd had access to a piano at some point, but not all had studied it formally. I thought the most interesting finding was that before coming here, almost everyone was involved in a chamber orchestra or band, or singing in a choir and playing in front of live audiences.
But varying enormously in size. Some had only played in tiny venues. I think it's worth saying that.
OK. And as you might expect from people wanting to study music, they all had a degree of proficiency in at least 2 instruments. But in most cases, one of the instruments was dominant.
Right. We need to talk about attitudes to music practice. The most striking thing here is that even students who you'd expect to practice for hours every day until they get it perfect say it's being terrified of failing that really makes them practice. I know I'm the same.
Me too. It's interesting what was said about practicing alone. Some people preferred that because they could focus more on their weak points.
But that wasn't a majority view. What most of them agree on is that there's nothing more rewarding than mastering something that's really hard to learn.
That's right. OK, after that, we should talk a bit about the pieces that students select for assessed performances.
There wasn't quite so much consensus on this, was there? A few people prefer to do pieces which are relatively unknown, while others choose the ones they think will show off their technical ability. But they were in the minority.
I think the first thing to say is that a high percentage said they would always try to learn their pieces by heart because it's too easy to get lost if you're trying to read and play when you're nervous.
OK. And quite a lot of them said it helps to listen to other people playing your chosen piece, preferably recordings, but even just other students. So finally, we need to look at the findings for students' attitudes to performing. We should point out that this includes informal and formal public performances as well as assessed ones.
Yes, that's important. I expected to find that performing solo would make students very nervous, but in fact that isn't the case.
They do find it hugely challenging to start with, but they appreciate the challenge and find it stimulating.
Right. I was surprised by what students said about deciding which pieces to perform. I thought they'd all say this was easy. For me, it's always been quite straightforward. Which pieces do I like best? And which pieces can I play well? And my repertoire is quite limited anyway. But the most commonly cited answer was that it took them ages to make their minds up.
I suppose it's because there are so many factors involved. You need to consider your audience, the venue, the time available to learn the piece, especially if it's complicated. You need to think about all these things, and you can't do that in a hurry.
That's true.
Then there's performing with musicians from a different genre, like a classical musician playing with a jazz group. That can really be fun.
But most of the music students had never even considered it.
Right. For performing with musicians who play the same instrument, almost everyone put the same thing.
Yes, they all said it was incredibly helpful, and not at all intimidating, which says a lot for the department's ethos.
Yes, that's a good point. OK, what I think we should sort out now...
Section 3. You will hear two trainee teachers called Dean and Hannah talking about their recent teaching practice in an elementary school.
Hi, Dean. Did you have a good weekend?
Yes. It was good to relax after a whole week of teaching practice. I really enjoyed the experience, though.
Yes, so did I. And I think it went well. Anyway, are you okay to talk about the report we've got to write on the geography lesson we taught together? I was thinking we could make notes now and then divide the actual writing up between us.
Sure. Good idea. Let's begin with our lesson aims, shall we?
Right. Well, I know the main one was getting the class to think about how people in different parts of the world are connected to each other through the things they buy and sell.
Yes. We took that from the syllabus for grade 4, and then we decided to use pencils as our example, because they're relatively simple in design, and everyone's used a pencil at some time or other. We should include that information too.
Right. And we also wanted to get the class thinking about how things are moved around the world in different ways, from the farms and the mines to the factories and then the stores. That wasn't in the core syllabus. I think we added that ourselves.
Yes, I think you're right.
Okay, then the last section of the report contains a post-lesson analysis.
We have to mention any problems we identified in our lesson when we taught it. So, any ideas?
Well, I know we were really satisfied with our handouts and worksheets. We both thought they'd been at just the right level for the class. And I don't know about you, but I think we worked well as a team.
Absolutely. Neither of us was too dominant, and we supported each other. Personally, the thing I think we didn't get right was the way we paced things. Some things seemed to be rushed, and others seemed to drag out too long. I don't know how you feel about that.
The same as you. If we did the same lesson again, I'd want to make some adjustments to that, but keep the same basic lesson plan.
Okay, we see eye to eye on that. But there's one other thing. At the time, I seem to remember we both thought that organizing the children in sets of 6 didn't work very well, and that pairs would have been better for certain tasks, so that the shyer kids got more chance to contribute.
Yes, I remember that too, and we should put it into our report as well.
Now, should we go over our lesson plan together before we write the report? It seems ages ago now.
Fine. Well, the whole lesson was based on the production and distribution of pencils. First, we gave out the pencils and got the students to decide what they're made of. Then, when they'd come up with all 5 of the component materials, we talked about which countries produce most of these materials.
Oh, yes. And we got volunteers to come to the front and mark the location of those on a map of the world. I remember they were really keen to volunteer. We had to stop them from calling the answers out loud.
Right. Then we brainstormed all the different ways of getting goods from one place to another and what the advantages and disadvantages of each one would be. I remember one girl talking about using horses.
That's right. She seemed to be a bit stuck in the past. It was hard not to smile.
Yes. After that, we put them in small groups, and each group represented each of the countries on the map. They had to use their atlases to decide an itinerary for sending their raw materials to the USA, specifying the different ports and places on the way there.
That's right. And by the time they'd done that, it was break time.
And after the break, they had to imagine they were pencil manufacturers in Chicago and fill in details on a worksheet about how they dispatch their pencils to different parts of the country.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And then we had a class discussion about whether people will still be using pencils in 2050 and whether the design of pencils is likely to change. And to round the lesson off, the kids had to spend 10 minutes planning a short presentation for another class about possible developments. And that was it.
Good. So I'll write up that part and you...